That was such an extraordinarily rich discussion, actually, because each of you presented individually, but I think there was a lot of interaction between the words that you had to say. There is so many things I would love to ask. We barely have time for even one question, but I am going to put one to you and try and elicit very brief but very pointed answers from you. Donald Trump likes to talk in terms of who holds cards. And it strikes me that America has a pack full of cards in its hand. China has a pack full of cards in its hand. Europe has a pack full of cards, but every card is in a different person's hand. How do you bring about a situation where those cards are played coherently, without waste, and in a way that multiplies rather than divides the capability of this extraordinary continent? I think you've addressed this a little bit, but I will hand back to you in a second to do that. So I just want to, Ben, a concrete thought about what Europe can do. We all know what we aspire for Europe to do, what we would like to see. What small measures maybe, but what important measures can be taken to assure that this opportunity results in a stronger Europe with a capability to defend itself as it must?
Well, some of the things that hold back growing new companies is intellectual property challenges and export policies. And both Florence and I would collaborate on defense projects with Germany, for example. And we'd be wanting to sell somewhere, same in France, but German export policy was entirely out of kilter with France and Britain's. And so what we could certainly do is start addressing issues like that. Also on top of that, issues around intellectual property, technology transfer. But also the one thing we do share is our military leaderships learn together, exercise together, and therefore shape effectively the future demand signals for what equipment modern militaries are going to need. And if we are going to fight tomorrow's war, not yesterday's, it is very important that we generate a new generation of military leaders who see what's going on in the world, understand the new levels of technology and what it can do, and I think they will then collaboratively produce a demand signal that means that we all have something to contribute to.
Okay.
And the new way, one of the things about new tech is it is not as manpower intensive. So one of the things that shapes our defense policy is our trade unions, right? And our jobs, right? Ultimately, it's a brave government that's going to say we're not buying lots of warships made in British yards or French yards or Spanish yards because we're actually going to go and buy a whole load of autonomous drones made in warehouses. And then you see, in the corridors of power, the social policy being shaped, or defense policy, sadly, actually, you understand the political reasons, but not necessarily for the right reasons when it comes to defending ourselves. And that's why we end up with big battleships that don't always face the modern enemy.
Yeah, understood. Maybe we should recruit a few Ukrainians if we want to understand the current battlefield.
The new way of warfare is all sitting in your universities in Greece and in Britain and France. One of the cards we hold is the best universities in the world and some of the best educated people in the world. We don't need to lose those people to America or anywhere else. We should do everything to keep them. And if you look at how Ukraine has used its own people and its partnerships to develop weapons that entirely destroy Russian so-called exquisite equipment, it's in our own remit. And I'm hoping that the Greek government, with its speeches tomorrow and everything else and next weekend, will do more to stimulate. Doesn't have to be British, doesn't have to be French. You have that power here to do a lot more with your people.
Okay, Florence.
Well, I fully agree with the question of the intellectual property, which is really a problem even more for industries that have a past, so that have assets to be protected. And so it would be, of course, easier if we had to create joint industries starting from now. So intellectual property, and what I experienced as a major problem in the attempt to have joint armament programs is that exactly as Nikos said, we need a principle which is allocate to a leader a program. Because what we faced in the past in Europe was an allocation based on the financing coming from the member states. And so I want my money back, if I may.
Yeah.
So that was the
Understandably.
principle. Exactly. And we were not sure to get the best technologies at the best price in the best timing. So having a leader is something absolutely key for the success of such programs. But the reality is that in my period of time, it was not possible to get that principle that had been agreed, especially between Chancellor Merkel and President Macron. It was not implemented in real. So what do we need as Europeans to get convinced that this is the only way to succeed? I think that the current situation is so threatening that we should be ready to be convinced that it's time to consider that as individual countries, we will never compete in such a worldwide competition, first. So our strength is being Europeans. And unfortunately, there is a huge market given the conflictuality we are in. So there is room for developments, for joint developments, and there is room for all these students, engineers that Europe has, and we can succeed. But it's a question of decision. How long our leaders will still consider that they have to protect first their national interest. Okay. Of course, this is their duty, but they have also to consider that Europe is our future.
This seems to me a tremendous contradiction between the needs of a unified European defence architecture and the requirement of every national government that it serves its electorate, first and foremost. You gave us some thoughts about moves that you'd made, proposals that you'd made to get Europe started on this sort of unified approach to defence. Very briefly, any additional thoughts to that?
Well, we have to start from somewhere. And we have to start, let me elaborate on what Florence said yesterday, not today. We have to start yesterday working on that. Leave the operational planning to NATO. They're better than anybody at doing the operational planning. And we've always claimed that the European Union should complement NATO, not try to substitute it with respect to operational planning, but work on establishing a solid European defense industry by homogenizing systems, looking after interoperability and a joint procurement processes. But we have to do it now. If we only engage in wishful thinking through a very specific type of rhetoric, we are in danger of covering across even more than in the past as fragmented, indecisive, ultimately weak to the eyes of the emerging global south, the autocrats, and on the others that are antagonizing not only Europe, but the West. So we need to take action swiftly. We need to think out of the box. I'll give you a number that I think is very dramatic.
Very briefly.
If you add up the main battle tanks of France, Great Britain, and Germany, the number that will come out is much smaller of the main battle tanks that Russia lost in the Ukrainian front. Not the total number of main battle tanks Russia has, but those that were lost. So we need to zero in on specific projects, start working together. All the countries that are strong in their defense industry should take a leadership role and also try to complement, to come up with solutions with respect to cutting-edge technologies that the modern battlefield requires. Our Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, has proposed a European joint anti-ballistic system, because this is very important in the modern field of warfare. But we need to start. We need to take swift action and produce deliverable results, not just rhetoric. The more we say more in a rhetoric way, the more we fall behind in our antagonisms. And then I said the world is more antagonistic than ever. And in a stage of flux, we must not lose ground now. Because this is good also for the sake of democracy in the West.
Indeed, indeed.
Not just defense and security.
It's an existential question, which is one of the things that makes it so hard to answer. Well, in the interests of swift action, I'm going to call this panel to a close. I'm going to ask you to join me in thanking our panelists, but before I do that, just to say that leading us up to the break, we have a conversation, a panel on infrastructure, where I imagine quite a lot of this defense budget is going to go, but that will be chaired by Fotis Kollias, who will come up in a second. First of all, please allow me to thank our panel. Thank you. Yeah.